Amy, let me tell you about a magical place that is so exactly designed to be enclosed space, year-round fun for the whole family that I bet you already know what I'm going to say before I even say the name. Let's say it together on 3. 1, 2, 3. Great Wolf Lodge. You got it, Amy.
My kids loved Great Wolf Lodge when we went. You probably already know that it has a huge indoor water park with a wave pool, lazy river, a bunch of massive water slides. But then your pack can hit the other attractions because, wait, there's more.
Great Wolf Lodge has adventure-packed attractions like Magi Quest, a live-action game kids can play throughout the lodge, plus the Northern Lights Arcade. Spent some quality time there, so your kid who loves the lazy river and your kid who loves fantasy games will both have a great time.
Great Wolf Lodge also offers great dining options and complimentary daily events like nightly dance parties, all under one roof. Unpack the car once and you're settled in to have fun. And with 22 lodges across the country, you're always a short drive away from adventure.
We've both had such great times at Great Wolf Lodge, so bring your pack together at a lodge near you. Learn more at greatwolf.com and strengthen the pack.
We are definitely messing our kids up.
What fresh hell?
Laughing in the face of motherhood. There's no such thing as a normal person. With Margaret Abels
and Amy Wilson.
Let's not make a scene at the funeral by having tears.
A podcast that solves today's parenting dilemmas
so you don't have to.
You don't have to join a cult.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to What Fresh Hell, Laughing in the Face of Motherhood. This is Margaret.
And this is Amy. And today we're talking about breaking patterns when you want to do things differently than some other people did.
Amy, should we start by breaking our pattern of not doing mailbag by starting with a mailbag?
Yes.
Do you have a mailbag?
I do.
Okay, great.
Funny you should ask.
Mailbag.
This week's mailbag is from Instagram. Kayla wrote in to say, I was listening to your Grudges Held, Grudges Kept episode, and you all talked about clicking something techie, like, click on the link. My husband just roasted me so hard this weekend on a road trip because I kept telling my kids what to click on the tablet. Apparently, there is no more clicking. You tell them to touch or tap the icon. Hashtag back in my day. Kayla closes, I'm 31. So thanks, Kayla, for letting us know.
Clicking. You're right. Click the link. But wait a minute. Let me push back on that, as you like to say, Amy.
Yeah.
My mouse still makes a little satisfying clicky sound when I click on a link.
Well, hello, you're old because you use a mouse, probably. I mean, that's what they'd say. Like, if you're not, using your Google glasses, you're old. I don't know.
I guess not. Tap or touch. Amy, I'm bitter about that. I have to break my pattern, Amy. I have to break my pattern of saying clicking and instead say touch or tap.
Yes.
So that I don't sound like an oldie locks. I don't think that's the only giveaway to my oldie locks status, if I'm being honest.
No, we're not starting there.
I believe there are some other hints that I might be old.
Also, strictly speaking, that really is just it's a behavior, not a pattern.
Okay.
Just to give you the definition. First, I'm going to give this definition because it's really good. And then I'm going to tell you where I got this, which is also really good. So patterns, I like this sort of sorting mechanism. Pattern is something that your family had or has that has negative consequences, even if it looks okay from the outside. If it has a negative consequence to others, this behavior, then that's a pattern. If it doesn't really matter to other people, then it's a behavior. Like we're calling that clicking. It's a behavior. It's not a pattern. It's not bothering you, Kayla's husband.
Well, couldn't patterns also be positive, though? Or were you just saying in the context we're talking about?
Well, this is in the excavating your family's pain, which gets to...
Got it. Okay, because I was going to say, couldn't you just have a pattern of, always making delicious cookies? Isn't that also a pattern?
Sure, that would be a behavior, but you're not unpacking that an 8-day retreat in the woods. So this came from...
Am I going to be unpacking stuff? I was not warned that this was going to involve unpacking.
Yeah, I hope you brought stuff to unpack. So I always, just to give you a little backstory, when I do research for these episodes and I find somebody, if it's seems like a good quote, seems like a good article, I always do a little work. I always make sure this person shows up, is affiliated with a university, has written articles, has done something besides this article.
Friends, Amy is she's working here behind the scenes. Don't just think she shows up on this mic. She double checks
I go down a rabbit hole and make sure this person is a real person. So anyway.
Yeah, she doesn't do what so many of us do, which is give equal weight to like the head of the CDC and like Elfman 162 on Twitter. She actually figures out if the person knows what they're talking about.
Unless he's an epidemiologist. That's right. Well, so in this case, this came from an article on Goop.com about breaking family patterns.
I'm skeptical, but continue.
And right, okay. And it was quoted by somebody who is the head of something called the Hoffman process. And I'm like, okay, have never heard of the Hoffman process. I'm also a little dubious of Goop.com, jade eggs, etc.
Goop.com. We know there have been some problems there.
So I did a little dive on the Hoffman process. It turns out it's a cult. It's basically a cult. What? If you scratch the surface, it's all people like, whatever you do, don't let your partner go to the Hoffman process. They came home after you go for 8 days and you have to wear signs and stuff that like say like, I was never loved, middle child.
It's 9 Perfect Strangers. Yeah.
It's 9 Perfect Strangers. Exactly. And you come home and you're like, well, I'm going to upset the apple cart of my life because, I desire meaning. So I guess it's a cult. And this has never happened to me before that I got good advice that turned out to be from something that seemed like a cult. It came up twice researching this episode. That like, well, that seems sound. Oh, it's a cult. Sorry. So I think it's because childhood wounds, a very special kind of thing we search to fix all our lives.
Well, having lived for a long time in California, there's also a lot of like California speak that is legit, but also very California, right? Like now you hear people use the phrase inner child non-ironically. I mean, not me, but some people, and I feel like some of these kind of goony goo-goo ideas, they start with like California therapy speak, but they may or may not have valid underpinnings.
Right. But it is a thing, though, right? That we have childhood patterns that shape our behavior. Like, that's not the part that's a little goony goo goo. It's just maybe what you do with that and how you let that shape where you are in your life. And can you make other decisions?
Well, see this. Now you're talking, Amy, because I think.
Okay.
I'm going to make a very broad statement that I don't even totally agree with, but I tend to be team people can't change. They can change their behaviors, but they can't change their patterns. That's my belief.
That you sound like the poet Philip Larkin. I'm going to give you a poetry for your day. I have to change one of the words.
Wow. You're all over the place. Your cults, your poems. I mean, where are we going in this episode?
This is the stuff of deep search for meaning. So Philip Larkin is a British poet. He wrote a poem called This Be the Verse. I'm going to change one word. See if you can guess what word I'm changing. They mess you up, your mom and dad. They may not mean to, but they do. They fill you with the faults they had and add some extra just for you. That's enough. I'll leave it there. How do you feel about that? They may not mean to, but they do. I'm like, yeah, that's it. Like, this is universal. P.S. We're doing it too. Like, we are definitely messing our kids up despite our best intentions in ways that they'll be talking about in 20 years.
There was a Christmas years and years ago where we were gifted a book. I'm going to use your switch out word called They Mess You Up, the family. And it was stories about people who'd been very messed up by their families.
Yeah, it's universal.
For sure. And this is also something we've talked about. I know we talked about it with Dr. Christine Coe on the podcast. And I think this is something that we've seen reflected in the group quite a bit, especially people who come from childhoods that they feel were toxic or very much had negative patterns. That how do you break a cycle when it's kind of all you know?
Yes.
And I think that, and I've definitely seen it in friends of mine and in my own family, people who had extraordinarily difficult childhoods who've gone on to raise functional families. The other thing I will argue is that fundamentally, everyone has an operating system. There's no such thing as a normal person or a functional person.
Or a perfect childhood.
Or a perfect childhood, right. That you are always working in some sort of familial construct. And that's just what it is. Like, if I'm anxious and my husband's overly laid back, that's imparting on our children in certain ways. That, like, some of our children may be underreactive to stuff and some may be overreactive to stuff. And I find now that my kids are tweens that we're having a lot of conversations where one of them, and this is just a very tweeny thing that I remember doing myself. You know what I'm realizing about myself? I'm quoting my child here. You know what I'm realizing about myself?
Through the Hoffman process?
Sometimes I feel sad, but it's not connected to anything that happened. It's just, I just feel sad.
Okay, so what your kid is doing, this is blowing my mind because your kid is realizing something that we don't have the capacity to do when we're younger than your kids are now.
Which is?
So Karen Young, psychologist Karen Young says, the reason why these messages are so powerful and they're things we spend the rest of our lives trying to undo and unpack and, go to retreats about, whatever, is that these messages are planted before we discover our capacity to challenge and reject them. They're messages about ourselves that we accept as true. And when kids get to be as old as your kids are now, that's when they're like, hey, right? I have this feeling, but that feeling isn't me. I can choose another path, right? Just because dad yells at me doesn't mean I'm a bad kid, but that doesn't kick in until, 10, 12.
Right. You're coming to it later.
Yeah.
And just for the record, my kid did not say, it was not related to my husband yelling at him.
It's okay. You can tell us. It's fine.
Just to be clear. But I also sometimes want to say to my kids, yeah, that's everybody, by the way. Like everybody feels sad for no reason sometimes, but you're right. They're coming to it. I was just listening to an interview with Katie Tur.
And she had a crazy family story. I don't remember what it is, but
she just wrote a book called Rough Draft. Maybe we'll see if we can get her on the podcast. And the book is fascinating. And it's about, she grew up, her parents were helicopter reporters in LA. Kind of wild, bought a helicopter and just started driving around. And her mom would lean out the side with a camera and her dad would fly it around. And sometimes they were in the back. Yes. And she talks about her father, who has since transitioned and is now a woman, during their childhood being extremely verbally and at times physically abusive, and being also extremely aggressive as a reporter. And that when she first started reporting, the police would say okay, this is where the press has to stay. And she'd be like, oh, I just walk over the barrier and start screaming at people and being like, get out of my way, copper. And people were like, whoa. You don't do that. You're going to lose your press badge. But it was interesting that in the very specific, she had learned her job from her parent. And then she had also learned a lot that she sort of unpacks in the book about, obviously, the patterns of abuse and violence that she grew up with in her household.
Wow. That sounds really, yes.
Fascinating. But that certain of those examples, this is not how you behave as a reporter, are behavior fixable, right? You don't get in every cop's face and say, I'm not standing here. I'm going right up to the president. No, you can't actually do that. Some of the other stuff is a little more complicated to unpack.
Yeah. And you don't see, it takes you years to see that it's wrong. I was not talking about your family before, of course, when I was saying that your husband yells at your kids, but some dads and some moms yell at kids, and you do internalize the message that the thing that they're yelling at you for is justified. You must have done something. You must have done something to make your parents split up or make your dad, scream at you, whatever. And Karen Young has a thing that she says about toxic families that would have this sort of feeling that you sort of brace because something bad is going to come sooner or later and you can't see it coming because you can't when you're a kid and you can't because it's not your fault as the kid. Something bad's going to come. You have to brace yourself against it and the environment that you're in doesn't feel safe. And so your need for control escalates the things that you can control. And then,
right.
30 years later, you're a very controlling adult who needs to get to the airport 4 hours ahead of time. And because you can control it. And it all goes back to these messages that you receive before you're able to sort of query them, before you're able to make your own decisions.
Right. They're imprinted. I was reading another memoir about another abusive situation. It wasn't Katie Tur's, and there was a line in it where it was about an abusive relationship. And this person said, I would feel almost a sense of relief when the actual abuse, the hitting started, because I was it's over. Now the good part's coming. Because afterwards it was all apologies and making up and
ice cream and yeah.
That the relief that would come, because the build was what was so scary about being in that place. And that those are the kind of things that imprint on your mind. You have to bring the bad stuff closer and faster so that you can get to the healing on the other side of that. That's a completely messed up message, but it's very deeply imprinted when you've had those kind of experiences.
Yes. And then, lest you had a completely conflict avoidant household, that's also a pattern because there's things being swept under the rug and you're not able to discuss things openly and you're not able to admit what's happening. And that is also a pattern that creates toxicity in our relationships as adults. And it's something else that is maybe less dangerous to you as a kid, but it's still something that you have to first recognize as a pattern. You know, it makes me think of something that Ibram Kendi said. Dr. Ibram Kendi, when we interviewed him, said that first you have to, if you want to teach your kids how to be anti-racist in the world, first you have to teach them what's special about who they are and their culture, and then what's special about other cultures that are different from theirs, and then how they're alike. It's you're learning as an adult, like, oh, this was special about my family. This was a pattern that was just us. There are other families that discuss their problems openly, maybe even yell at each other at the dinner table, but everybody speaks to each other. Like you start to realize, oh, my family was messed up in a very special way.
Right. Or even if you don't want to say messed up, my family had a specific operating system, which is how we functioned, which is different than other families.
Yeah.
I have more to say about that, Amy. We'll be right back.
For some of us, tax season is one of the only times that we look at our finances fully. And once it's over, well, that was terrible. And it is completely understandable not to want to think about it for another whole year. But using Monarch and being intentional with your finances in an ongoing way helps you see where your money is going and how you can put your refund to best use.
We are here to tell you, simplify your finances with Monarch. Monarch is the all-in-one personal finance tool designed to make your life easier. It brings your entire financial life, budgeting, accounts and investments, net worth, and future planning together in one dashboard on your phone or laptop.
Feel aware and in control of your finances this tax season and get 50% off your Monarch subscription with code FRESH.
As you know, my husband and I are preparing to send, 3 kids off to college, and I cannot tell you how helpful Monarch has been in showing us our full financial picture, helping us to track our spending and reach important savings milestones. Our weekly meeting, Amy, it's now run by Monarch.
Love it. Achieve your financial goals for good with Monarch, the all-in-one tool that makes money management simple.
Use code FRESH at monarch.com for half off your first year. That's 50% off at monarch.com, code FRESH. Amy, when I'm having a good hair day, it usually makes my whole day better. And that's why on every day, I'm taking Nutrafol.
Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist-recommended hair growth supplement brand, and it's the #1 hair growth supplement brand personally used by dermatologists. Nutrafol's hair growth supplements are peer-reviewed, NSF certified for sport, and clinically tested.
Nutrafol offers multiple formulas for men and women tailored to different life stages and lifestyle factors, so you get support that's actually right for you. Adding Nutrafol to your daily routine is easy. Order online, no prescription needed, with automated deliveries and free shipping to keep you on track.
Let your hair be one less thing to worry about. See visibly thicker, stronger, faster-growing hair in 3 to 6 months with Nutrafol.
For a limited time, Nutrafol is offering our listeners $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping when you visit Nutrafol.com and enter promo code LAUGHING.
That's Nutrafol.com, spelled Nutrafol.com, promo code LAUGHING.
I think the crucial thing to focusing on operating systems is also that a lot of people grew up in extremely functional houses that were conflict averse or bad situation averse. So I know, there's been a lot of writing about this, how psychologists, therapists, psychiatrists 50 years ago saw people because it was like my dad got drunk and beat up my mom every night, right? Like that was the thing they were unpacking. Or I was rejected because I was different, gay, whatever it was. And that therapists report more and more now seeing people who are like, I grew up in this like blissful bubble and now the world seems really difficult and complicated to me because my pattern was so safe that I don't really understand how to deal with conflict. So it's not just breaking the pattern or identifying the pattern of I had a traumatic childhood and I need to not replicate that. It's also a little bit of like, I think so many of us, especially people who are listening to parenting podcasts and reading parenting books and trying to do it right, are pretty aware of like, okay, we're not hitting kids anymore. We're not having, abusive or addicted parents in the house. And like, but it's about knowing it's the famous, I've quoted it before, Foster Wallace's This is Water speech, you know, that the punchline of the speech is that one fish passes two younger fish and says, "Morning, boys, how's the water?" And the two fish turn to each other and they say, "What's water?" It's like, if you don't know what pattern and system you're operating in, you just don't have the context to know how to change it or if it even needs to be changed.
Does that story, just the way you told it just now, made it sound like the fish who said, "Good morning, how's the water," was older or bigger than the little fish?
He's the wise fish.
Yeah, the wise fish knows that you're in water, and the younger fish haven't figured that out yet. You have to get to a certain point in adulthood or maturity to even figure this out, I guess. Like, oh, that was the way we did things. And then to step out onto the ledge of, I want to do things differently. I mean, entering therapy or deciding you're going to do something about this, or that you are going to do things differently, and not knowing what that means is deeply scary. It can be, I'm going to quote, couples and family counselor Robert Taibbi says that once you step out of your old patterns, especially in important relationships, anxiety floods and you become hyper alert to the dangers of entering unknown territory. I identify with this, like having been in that moment, like, okay, we need to change. We need to change how we're doing things. But what does that mean, right? I know one way of doing things. Now I'm supposed to do it just like some other way. And it's not as simple as like, just do a 180 and do it completely the opposite. Just hug more. Like, it's not as simple. And so you have to step into this deeply scary, confusing, let's figure this out together place where there aren't rules. And there were at least rules around the patterns that you grew up with.
Yeah, that's right. And there's a lot of safety. And going back to Dr. Kendi again, it's like being able to say to yourself, what about our lives and the way that we operate is teaching our kids that white people are different than other people? Like, that's a really scary question.
Right.
And because it makes you feel like, wait, I've done something bad. I've done something racist. I've done something. And that part of it, I think, it's so much scarier in your mind than it is in real life.
It ignites these little kid getting in trouble things. I'm quoting Robert Taibbi here, that when you address this stuff, these old patterns, you go back to being the little kid in your mind. So the little kid in your mind is going to get in trouble if you admit that you don't absolutely always know what you're doing and you're always a perfect parent and you always have the right answers. And admitting that you might need to change is really hard.
And I also think that changing is very hard in itself. Like, admitting you need to change is hard. And then changing, I would argue, is fundamentally impossible.
Yeah.
But because I think that we think of it as like, okay, we've been building since we were kids, like a little toothpick, tower that we're standing on top of. And that like, okay, now it's 78 stories high because this is how we built our toothpick tower because it's all we knew, and that maybe we're trying to relate to our spouse or our kids who are on their own crazy toothpick towers, and that we think that the work is to dismantle that whole tower and meet back on Earth. And I just don't believe in that as a system. I think that what you do is recognize your tower, figure out the places you can shore it up, figure out the places where like you can lower it down to someone else's level or have someone else, whatever, but that you're never going to dismantle your childhood. It's not going to happen.
But you aren't a child. Like, I guess where change is possible, that you react to a fight with your spouse like you're an 8-year-old again. Or you react to your 8-year-old being bratty. Like, we never even talked about Princess Kate at the Queen's 70th anniversary of being queen or whatever it was, when he was being, really, he was being pretty bratty in the box, right? He like thumbed his nose at her and she told him to be quiet and he put his hand over his mouth. And it was an event that we all read into different things. That was adorable. That was horrifying, whatever you thought it was. I looked at that and was sort of like, well, I would not have gotten away with that, right? Like, that would not have flown when I was a kid, and it wouldn't have flown with my kid. But then to hear the people be like, oh, it's adorable. He's a 4-year-old. He's tired. He doesn't want to sit there. What's the big deal? And just to hear like, oh, you could react to it that way with not like, you, like, right? I would have had that kid like
right
in the restroom, like away from the cameras as quickly as possible. That's probably how I would have reacted. And that doesn't mean it's right. It's just how I would have reacted. And to see people being like, oh, isn't that sweet and indulgent? It almost made me mad. Like, that's not sweet. And like, he's misbehaving.
Get that kid in line.
Right.
My reaction was, don't have kids who are going to be on TV when they're 4. Like, that was my whole reaction to it. I was like, I just would never want to be in the position where I was on TV with a 4-year-old who like people were judging my parenting. But I do think that's right. Like, and that this is, I'm going to lay a little my mom on you.
Okay.
And I believe I've quoted this previously. She, who was a family therapist and did a lot of work in this area, would say, which this is what I believe 100%. You cannot change patterns or how you feel about things, but you can always change your behavior. And that's where the difference is to me. I cannot change being triggered by misbehavior like you, right? Mm-hmm. I will always, no matter how much work I do on myself, be triggered by my kids misbehaving in public because I have been raised to believe that kids should respect their parents. And when I'm out in public and my kids disrespect me, I feel wronged and slighted, and that everyone in the room is taking out like recorders and notebooks and being like, on this date, Margaret's children misbehaved in this way.
Margaret Abels of the What Fresh Hell podcast. Yeah.
Because the spotlight comes on. I will never lose the instinct that like my kids misbehaving in public is unacceptable and the most horrible thing that could ever happen.
I'm relieved to hear you say that. I honestly am.
But I can understand that that is my pattern.
It's you, right?
And then say, I'm not going to stand down and hiss at my kids and be like, if you don't cut it out, I will never buy you ice cream again as long as you live. Because I realize that it's my problem, not their problem.
Yeah.
And so I can change my behavior. Similarly, right? We were both raised in Irish Catholic families. I mean, we sometimes joke in our family that our family motto is, let's not have a lot of crying at the funeral. Like, it's just, we do not, people who express, let's not make a scene at the funeral by having tears. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, and then we have an Italian branch of the family, and we were once at a funeral together, and the Italian people were like screaming and yelling and like rending their garments. And I mean, seriously, like the Irish side of the family was like, what is happening right now, you know? And so I can recognize in myself that my instinct is like strength is the most important thing. Emotionality is a negative. And that sometimes when I'm dealing with someone who's having a hard time, I understand that my instinct is always going to be like, suck it up, buttercup. It's not that bad. And like, let's get back to work. That's what'll make us feel better. But that I can break that pattern by changing the behavior. That I can say like, let me lean in with this person who's hurting because I know my instinct is to just shove it into the bottle of inner death that I put everything in. And like, maybe instead I could... And similarly, when I feel overwhelmed and anxious, I've learned through some help from some therapy friends that anxiety is the cork on the sadness bottle, basically. And that when I start to feel anxious, I need to try to identify what's making me feel sad.
Interesting.
You know, or out of place. And so I cannot change my instincts, but I can change my behavior. That's, I mean, solved it, Amy.
I like to think of it as sliding a piece of paper in between the reaction or the feeling that I have and the behavior, right? Like I followed rules. I'm a rule follower. I certainly followed rules when I was a kid. I expect my kids to follow rules. This kid is not following rules. My reaction is like, this cannot stand, right? And then my behavior would be to, you know, to hiss or whatever, or like drag the kid away, whatever. Can I slide a piece of paper in between my emotional reaction and then what I'm going to do next?
Yeah.
It's hard to do, but noticing it is important.
I think that's right. And I think you can unpack that another step, which is, are there places where I'm feeling angry because I feel that rule followers should get a certain kind of result? Like rule followers should get rewarded, right? Like that's something that you were taught as a kid. Like if you check boxes A through D, E comes next.
Yes.
And that as a human, what you find often is that you check boxes A, B, C, D, and then you get Z, or you get nothing, or you get A again. And it's like, right, I have a very ingrained feeling that when I do right, I should be rewarded, you know? And,
right.
And that's a pattern. And so I think it is worth unpacking all of this stuff to say, what are the beliefs I have? And it really dovetails with anti-racism stuff. What are the beliefs I have? Mm-hmm. Why do they have them? A lot of these beliefs are maybe morally neutral. They don't mean I'm a horrible person. This is the things I was raised. I was raised to believe that like good writing is Shakespeare and Mark Twain and, you know, whoever I was raised to believe. Is it possible that like I'm not open to some really good writers because I wasn't told they were good writers. And do I maybe even have some inherent belief that certain people are better writers than others based on things that make no sense? I might, And I think that I really like this topic, and it's something I think about a lot with pattern breaking, because it's not just like my mom hit me. How do I not hit my kids?
Right. Because what do I do instead is not clear when it's been imprinted on you. And I think this sort of like, it's my turn thing that I think I can sometimes get stuck on as a parent. And I don't physically abuse my kids, but I just mean I had to sit there. I had to behave. I was raised in a time when, you went to church and you sat nicely in the pew and you weren't like thumbing your nose at your mother. Are you kidding me? Like, I would never even consider doing such a thing. And now it's my turn, right? I followed the rules.
Now yes.
All this time. Now I, with a look, I'm supposed to just, put this down. And my kids did behave in church, whatever. So I don't even know why it bothers me so much. Just like, no, that's not how it's supposed to be. No. Now I'm on this side and you're supposed to behave. What do you mean you're not going to? I love certainty. I crave certainty. I love, to know what's going to happen next. And I think when something like that unexpected, it just completely unsettles me and it makes me probably anxious.
Yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense. All right. We'll be right back.
All my kids learned to swim when they were little. It was super important to me that they be confident and safe in the water. There was only one problem with that: taking them to swim lessons. I mean, the pools were freezing. There were always cranky adults doing laps right there. And it was definitely not, for any of us, what you would call fun.
Amy, heard. But now there's Goldfish Swim School. Goldfish takes a really thoughtful approach to swim lessons, combining research-based teaching with a warm, kid-friendly environment that actually helps kids thrive in the water.
Every detail at Goldfish is thoughtfully designed to create a golden experience, from shiver-free, warm indoor pools to comfy waiting areas for parents to professionally trained lifeguards on deck.
Goldfish uses an approach called the science of swim play, which combines guided play with proven teaching techniques to help kids learn to swim, build water safety skills, and gain confidence, all at their own pace. Lessons are designed to meet kids exactly where they're at.
If you've been thinking about swim lessons or just wondering where to start, this is a great opportunity. Right now, Goldfish Swim School is offering a waived membership plus your child's first lesson free at participating locations.
Just visit goldfishswimschool.com/free to find a location near you and enroll using promo code FREE.
That's goldfishswimschool.com/free, promo code FREE. My favorite skincare products actually feel more like self-care, like they're so nice to put on and they smell so good that I'm actually happy when I get to that part of my day. And I swear that is how I feel about Osea's anti-aging body balm.
Amy, you are usually the lotions and potions queen on this podcast, but I have to say, hard agree.
Osea's anti-aging body balm is a liquid silk body balm that combines the lasting hydration of a lotion with the firming power of a serum, leaving skin smoother and firmer.
This body balm is clinically tested and designed to deliver visible results you can see and feel.
So we've gotten to use this product for a couple of months now, and I swear I have really noticed firmer and smoother skin, like on the back of my hands. It's like getting a mini spa treatment from head to toe.
Get a spring-worthy glow with clean, clinically tested skincare from Osea. And right now, we have a special discount just for our listeners.
Get 10% off your first order site-wide with code FRESH at OseaMalibu.com.
That's 10% off your first order with code FRESH at OSEAMalibu.com.
Lululemon just made the coziest matching set to get you to and from Pilates. Meet the Steady State hoodie and sweatpants, a fan favorite from our men's line, reimagined in super loft fabric that's smooth on the outside, fleecy soft on the inside. Level up your comfort in the new Steady State Super Loft, available now at Lululemon.com.
And now, classic husband fights.
From the What Fresh Hell podcast.
The just because you can repeat exactly what I said doesn't mean you were listening fight.
What? You were talking about your friend Jane, or I don't know, Jen, the one who is annoying to you in some way. You were talking about her.
The why do I have to remember everyone's birthday and shop for them even though they're on your side of the family fight.
Sweetheart, I don't know what kind of sweater my mom would like.
The taking apart the dryer because why should we pay someone to fix it when I can do it myself fight.
I should have this working by the weekend after next. At the latest, I just gotta figure out what part I need.
The why did you bring this home from the grocery store when it's not at all what I asked for fight.
If soy milk isn't real milk, then why does it say milk on it?
The what? I'm supposed to give you a medal for doing 6 dishes fight.
Knocked out the dishes, hon, except that gross one you did the chicken in, and the one with the eggs from this morning. I didn't know what you wanted me to do with those.
This has been Classic Husband Fights.
From the What Fresh Hell podcast. All right, let's talk about some things to try when we're trying to sort of reset patterns and do things differently. The first thing is for anxiety, that this is Robert Taibbi said, step back from the searching for certainty that usually occurs when you're anxious. Like, let me just get more information on this. Let me just try it again to get the result I think I'm going to get. Let me pound on the vending machine to get the candy to come out because it's supposed to come out when I do a certain thing. And then just understand you're anxious and it's the anxiety that's the problem. It's not the vending machine. It's that you're feeling the way you're feeling.
Yeah, no, it's huge. And I have had people tell this to me, and I tell it to a lot of people, like my anxiety new go-to phrase, this is just what's happening right now. And it's like really helping me like slow down, you know? But what if, you know, the kid who's getting, 63s on every math test, and like, believe me, I come from a family of extremely high academic achievers, and I was the low academic achiever in my own family. And I have feelings to unpack about how that made me feel. And I didn't feel, where I didn't fit in because I wasn't, the one who was doing great in school like everybody else. Now I have kids who are struggling with their own grades, but what if this and what if this? And I've got a, 6th grader who is not going to college all of a sudden, and slowing down the thoughts and breaking that pattern. And for me, that phrase, like, this is just what's happening right now. This has nothing to do with what's going to happen later.
I wish I had heard that in my head this morning. I was going to my daughter's sort of graduation ceremony from school, but I had to go to a doctor's appointment first. Anyway, I go to this doctor's appointment often. They kept me waiting 20 minutes. They never keep me waiting at all. Today, of all days, they keep me waiting 20 minutes. I'm going to miss the start of this ceremony. I have to see this doctor because I only see this doctor every 6 weeks, whatever. And somebody else was waiting too. And he said something and like, the doctor is, you will get in as soon as you can. And then 10 minutes later.
Right. Whenever you get anxious, then you get the woman, ma'am.
Yes.
The doctor. And you're like, oh, I'm going to murder you. When they get...
They will see you. Right, exactly. And then 10 more minutes went by and I was like, and texting my husband, like, I'm going to be late. Save me a seat. I was late. He saved me a seat. And I was like, and then eventually I went up. I tried to be nice. I'm sure I was betraying my extreme irritation about this. And, he gave me the same answer. It's going to take as long as it's going to take. I was furious, but it didn't make the doctor see me any sooner. And then I was a little late to my daughter's thing and my husband saved me a seat. Like, if I could go back and tell myself, I was like that Pixar guy with like the fire coming out of my ears over having to wait 20 minutes.
Yeah, firehead. Yeah. Well, listen, it's easier said than done. I'm not walking through, as you well know, having spent time with me, I'm not walking through the world like just another Zen day in Margaret land, another easy breezy, beautiful cover girl day in my land. No, I'm not. But I do find that helpful.
Karen Young says that you should check your body. And I did in that situation. I did think to myself, this is useless. I'm getting very anxious about this. I know I did in the moment try to talk myself down. I just didn't have your magic words to help me. But she says in those moments, being kept waiting, she would suggest that you're responding to a new situation as if the situation is an old familiar one from when you were powerless and helpless and small. So like, notice how you feel in your body and what are you clenching and what are you holding and what are you tightening, and can you relax it? Can you notice like, oh, that's what I do. And I wonder if I've been doing that for decades.
Yep.
You can release the firmly held belief.
And certainly you see these patterns. I mean, my mom was famous for she wasn't a go along, get along kind of a gal, she was like, and I always remember her like at, we would stop at some like roadside diner and it was a bit of a performance art piece of like looking at the spoon. Like it was always just like, oh God, this is a horrible place that I've ended up and I don't like it here. And she was sort of a healthy eater too. It was like a little bit, of disdain for certain foodstuffs and establishments. And I do it. I find myself at some point, my husband forgot to book a room for his college reunion, which is, again, it's beginning of the pattern of like, you always mess this up, you know? And we ended up staying at a wet cigarette smelling motel on like the outskirts of Boston. It was pretty bad. But instead of just being like, let's make this a fun adventure, I just went right into the like, I could feel like that vibe of like, touching this and this. I did a 3-day performance piece about how upset I was with the motel, and I just couldn't find the break line in the pattern. I was too mad. I was too whatever. So sometimes your brain gets overridden, but you can also say like, oh, I'm doing this thing that I've learned and been taught, which, believe me, has some good uses, which is, you know,
right.
Arch disdain for situations. Sometimes it serves me very, very well.
Don't eat the poison berries. You did learn a few good things when you were little.
And like putting nonsense in its place was my mom's greatest skill, and something that like I hope I have learned from her. Like not suffering a fool. Like if we were ever at a, you know, event where someone was disparaging or being, you know, racist, sexist, like my mom could wither somebody, and like, God bless her. But she could also occasionally wither, you know, her dining companion with how unpleased she was with the meal, right. Which I also do.
Right. If Prince Louis sat next to your mom, I wanted to see it just like, you know, do that.
Yeah, no, that would not have happened. My mom had we called it the claw. She just had a hand, like the hand would come over the back of the front seat in this claw-like motion that was like, don't make me come back there. I mean, I don't even know if I can, what do you call that? Not verisimilitude. When you give something, anthropomorphize the hand, you know, like, I don't know what the hand said, but when we saw the hand, everyone went silent.
We were like a little bit giggly and a little bit like, oh no, she means it now?
Yeah, I don't remember. I just remember when the claw came back, everything stopped.
Just the world. Everything went white.
You didn't mess with the claw.
Karen Young had some advice with kids, because we haven't really talked about like, okay, you do want to do things differently. You have kids. You have to manage these big emotions and these triggers that you have. She says it's okay to ask for space and time. The example she says is, I am not happy with the way you hurt your sister. I need to think about what happens next, which I think is great advice, except I've tried to do this like when you're triggered and so is your kid. When your kid is really like dysregulated and they're kind of, you know, like they're coming after you with all their distress and you're like, whoa. Okay, let me just go in the other room for a minute. I need a little separate and need you. That's not the moment where you can be like, let me just take a little break to think about what happens next. Doesn't always work.
And all of this stuff is like, recognize patterns, break them when you can. It's not like, oh, hey, tomorrow you're going to wake up and be a completely relaxed person, Amy, who just doesn't care how things come out and doesn't care if there's a mess on the counter. It's like, that's what I mean. And I think sometimes we make that the goal. Like, well, I have to be this completely other person. And I remember early in my marriage having some fights with my husband where he would say in a kind of hilarious way, but he wasn't even trying to be funny, like, I just think you're saying that you wish you were married to a completely different kind of a person. And
have you met me?
Yeah, like, have you met me? Exactly. And I don't think it went great at the time, but like, respect to him for being able to say that, because it's true. Like, you can't get pizza from a Chinese restaurant, as Aunt Terry says. And like, you are a Chinese restaurant. You can't get pizza from yourself, you know?
Yeah.
You can't be other than you are.
Lisa D'Amour, who we've had on the show, she talks about, I was just listening to, she spoke at my kids' high school over Zoom. But anyway, I was watching the video playback. So good. And she says that mental health, the definition of mental health is having the right feelings at the right times, by which she means you're allowed to have negative emotions. You're allowed to be, you know, cry, yell, be angry, have them at the right times and not carry into, like, if I was mad, this doctor's appointment kept me waiting for 20 minutes. And then I blow up at my husband who was nice enough to save a seat for me an hour and a half later. That's not really the right emotion at the right time. I think that's what she's getting at. But that you're allowed to have emotions. Like you always say, it's behavior. You can feel however you want, but you may not hit your sister. That's the message to bring to our kids if we came from a pattern where certain emotions weren't safe to have or to display, certainly. That we can let our kids know they can have all the emotions they want. They just need to go to their room. They just can't hit their sister.
And that you occasionally do have emotions that don't fit, right? That's my kid being like, sometimes I feel sad for no reason. I'm like, yeah, welcome to being a human, kid. Get used to it. Sometimes I wake up anxious, right? Everybody does that. Your emotions don't. Oh, sometimes you're at a wedding and it's making you feel really sad or cringe or whatever it is, you know? And I think Yes. But I do think that maybe sometimes those are the times to, and I think also, again, going back to this pattern breaking that with patterns that don't seem that negative, some people were raised in families where presenting as happy and being a happy family was top of the triangle, right? And that's a whole thing to unpack, right? That like presenting as the people, I mean, that's why I see the royal so opposite. I'm like, those poor people, like I look at her and I'm like, good for her for not like insisting that her kids like act like crazy automatons in public, you know, because I think...
Right. Talk about patterns to break.
Right. Like the idea of like a 4-year-old is supposed to sit there and be like, I am really enjoying this performance by Elton John. Like, no, you're not. You're 4 and you're bored to death. But that's a different kind of a pattern, right? That like it is the most important thing that everyone where we live think we are the happiest family in the world, no matter what's going on behind the scenes, right? Like that's a whole other pattern that is, and I mean, let me say that everybody has that pattern to some degree. Nobody's putting their trash out in the street every night, right? Like everybody has had the experience of like, there is something going on that is secret and then we're not allowed to talk about. But those kind of patterns they're pernicious and sneaky in a way that maybe like bigger things may seem a little more obvious then.
Maybe knowing that it's universal, that this is something that everybody's dealing with, it will help some of us that have, you know, guilt and shame about these patterns that we're trying to overcome, just to feel like we're a little bit less alone and that you can make steps toward it. You can sort of put in new behaviors and you're not a bad person if you don't get it all completely right every single day.
We often say, Amy, there's a phrase that emerges for me. There's a phrase of the year, right? Every year.
Yeah.
One year it was double-edged sword. I can't remember what some of my other phrases of the year, but usually just about this time, my phrase emerges. And I hadn't really thought about it, but I now know what my phrase of the year is.
What is it?
And it is morally neutral. That's my phrase of the year.
Okay.
It really has like taken over my whole life, this idea of like...
Oh, mess is morally neutral. Right. That Casey Davis told us.
Mess is morally neutral. I also was working with a therapist on some OCD behaviors that I have, touching and repeating patterns to make me feel safe and in control. And she said, okay, but those things are morally neutral. Like there's nothing wrong with expressing your anxiety by touching the doorknob 3 times. It's morally neutral. You're bringing the shame to it.
It's not a pattern, right? Because you're not affecting anybody else negatively by touching the doorknob.
But I am bringing to it, like this is a very shameful and secret thing that I do. That the fact that I have to touch the doorknob makes me a crazy, nutty person who's not deserving of love. You know, like I'm bringing that to it.
Right.
And just to have somebody say like, food is morally neutral. Your house being clean is morally neutral. And I think to a large degree, your operating system is morally neutral. Now, if your operating system is making you abusive to somebody or making you act out against yourself, you know, but it's okay to look at your operating system as like, okay, everybody has a way that they do things. Nobody is not doing anything. Nobody's just going through their life at normal. And so you have an operating system that involves maybe, you know, more control than some and wanting to control outcomes than some.
Certainty. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I have an operating system that's maybe more freeform, but like is also, there's a sort of anxiety rat in a maze at the very center of it that's making me touch things and feel really nervous, even though I may present as a little bit more like loosey-goosey. My husband has an operating system where he turtle shells when trouble comes along, right? Like everybody has an operating system. And so it's not that like your family was wrong, other families were right. Your family was neutral, other people's were doing crazy things. Everybody has an operating system. And that gives us the permission to be like, let me look at this as a morally neutral thing.
Right.
I figure out what my patterns are and see which behaviors those patterns are causing that I can change.
It's morally neutral, but it's also one way of being.
That's right.
Your default setting is your default setting. It's not human beings' default settings. And so recognizing how you are different from other people is useful as a way in, but not something to feel bad about every second of every day, I guess.
Agree.
Solved it. This is interesting. I mean, we went deep in this one.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed this conversation. I hadn't, as you well know, prepped very much for this conversation, and yet I really felt it was useful.
You don't have to join a cult. You can just join our Facebook group.
I'm going to join the cult of Amy. That's what I'm going to do. You start a cult and I'll just join it.
Okay, I will.
Sounds good. Speaking of things you can join, have you joined our Facebook group? It's not a cult.
No.
It's just a bunch of really nice moms giving each other helpful advice. Some dads as well. I'm going to say it.
Yep. Parents of all stripes.
Parents of all stripes. You can find that at facebook.com/groups/whatfreshhellcast. And tell a friend. Tell a friend to come listen, learn, and enjoy, Amy, right?
That does sound like a cult, but just, in a really low-key way.
No, it's slightly cult-like. But we don't take any of your money, so it's fine. And with that, we'll talk to you next week.
Talk to you next week.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
The right window treatments change everything. Your sleep, your privacy, the way every room looks and feels. At Blinds.com, we've spent 30 years making it surprisingly simple to get exactly what your home needs. We've covered over 25 million windows and have 50,000 five-star reviews to prove we deliver. Whether you DIY it or want a pro to handle everything from measure to install, we have you covered. Real design professionals, free samples, zero pressure. Right now, get up to 40% off site-wide, plus get a free professional measure at Blinds.com. Rules and restrictions apply.